This is FSPN, the most trusted name in fake news. I'm your host, Frankie from Flatbush. It is high, it is far, it is December the 17th, 2025. It is Wednesday. And so we got a media press conference with Aaron Glenn as we start our Frankie from Flatbush show, where we do have a docket. There it is, Media Watch / AG Wednesday presser. Now, the key points coming out of this presser. Of course, Brady Cook will be starting on Sunday. Now, the good news about all this, in addition to the normal analysis that you'd get on every other channel, about, take a look at him, it doesn't hurt, let's see, maybe he could become a QB2. We know all that. But what this will actually mean for the Frankie Inner Circle members, we're going to be able to do a nice comp of the three different quarterbacks. If you think about it, we basically had three different quarterbacks, same system, same circumstances for the most part. We're going to see who does the best, and we're going to do this in two different ways. One, we're going to use the OPPP, which is similar to EPA, but it's my own proprietary system. And but it's similar to EPA. But the other thing is the quarterback system that I use, again, proprietary, and that's going to tell, and that way we could see if there's any difference between these quarterbacks. So, for example, if Brady Cook grades out significantly better than Fields and Tyrod, that would be very encouraging because he's running the same system they were, with mostly the same circumstances around him, the coaching, the receivers, the this, that, and he's a UDFA rookie. So let's see how he does, but that'll be a video for Inner Circle members. Join the Inner Circle by clicking the button down below. We got different pricing levels, whatever fits your budget. Just hit the join button and join, and you'll be in the know. Now, AG also said that there will be, of course, no new system run by Chris Harris, but we did find the new DC of the Jets for these last three games here after the Wilkes firing, but we did learn some little tidbits of information that confirm my theory about perhaps Aaron Glenn had this planned all along. What did he tell us? Well, he told us that Harris was interviewed by the Jets and other teams to be the DC. And if you remember, go into your mind way back, all the way back there. You got to remember that there was always this idea, well, Steve Wilkes is on the radar. Wilkes is probably Wilkes. But then there would be like delays. And it was like, well, okay, if it's Wilkes, why isn't he getting hired? And so I think there was some internal back and forth trying to figure out, should we do Wilkes? Should we bring in a Harris? What should we do here? And I think ultimately he landed on, well, let's bring in Wilkes. Harris is in the, in the wings. And I think what happened is Steve Wilkes convinced Glenn to run the Wilkes system or some combo, and it turned out to be disastrous. Glenn probably thought, damn it, I should have just hired Harris, had him run my Detroit system, have him run it. I will, I don't have to call plays. I'd just show Harris how to do it. It's not complicated. And that's probably what should have happened ultimately. But unfortunately, that was a mistake. And like I've said all along with Aaron Glenn, listen, he's not getting fired. No matter how much Mike Florio wants to jump up and down and say, one and done, one and done, one and done. It's like these people have like ejaculations. One and done. No. Like they just want chaos because they know it means ratings and money. One of the bigger shitheads in media, Mike Florio, he's a mobbed up guy, in case you didn't know, through his father. But anyway, that's not important. What's important is so I think they've correct, but then you got to give Glenn. Okay, so Glenn gets a little bit of blame for siding with Wilkes and going with Wilkes and being convinced by Wilkes to do the Wilkes thing. Okay, he deserves blame for that because he's the decision maker. But then you got to, on the other hand, give him credit also for going, all right, this didn't work. Let's get rid of this Wilkes guy. We'll give Chris Harris the job. And I think it's likely that Chris Harris just sticks around. He made a point of saying, hey, this is a guy and we've also heard media reports as well about Chris Harris being an up and comer. More than likely, we just stick with Chris Harris. We'll have to see how it goes. You never know. There's a lot of good candidates out there. I think Jimmy Leonard would be kind of perfect, but nothing saying that Jimmy Leonard wants to be here and work for crazy Woody Johnson. But Chris Harris is already here, so hopefully he does a nice job. The defense, does a good enough job. There's obviously a problem with personnel that we've been talking about since the summertime, but the scheme didn't help much, and I think it's little technical things like if you saw people were comparing the stance of Quinnen Williams from when he was on the Jets this year and when he was on the Cowboys this year and when he was on the Jets previous years. Now, if you remember, Aaron Whitecotton was our defensive line coach previously under Saleh. And guess who the defensive line coach for the Cowboys is? Aaron Whitecotton. And they're saying he's gotten back to this other stance, and that's why he's producing more than he did this year with the Jets. So if a little thing like that is attributable to Wilks, that's very, very, very stupid. Let's change one of the best defensive tackles in all of football, change his stance, change the way he operates, and what? Why? He's one of the best in the league, you dum-dum. You don't change anything with Quinnen Williams. God's sakes. But anyway, that's apparently what happened. That's just one of these minor little technical points where maybe Chris Harris and, I don't know, maybe Eric Washington deserves some blame, or you never know. Maybe Eric Washington was against this and was saying, this is a bad idea, guys. And they did it anyway. You never know. But hopefully Washington and Harris and Glenn now are all in the same, thinking along the same lines, where we just have a regular old 4-down line, 1-gapping attacking system, which is what Saleh and Ulbrich and Quinnen and everybody and Aaron Whitecott and everybody was running. And it worked okay. You could definitely say it wasn't elite and it's overrated, but it at least was okay. This, whatever the hell this is, turned out to be a disaster. So, very, very strange. But let's see what happens. Maybe they just make that one little tweak to whatever they were doing on the D-line, and maybe that makes a big difference. I don't know. Would be nice. We'll see. Maybe it could be just that simple. And Wilks was just overcomplicating it in his mind. God knows what he was thinking. This will be better for, obviously he wanted to, not like he wanted to suck. So he must have thought it would work better for some reason. And of course, that's oversimplification. There's much, much more to it than that. But that's just one example of what could be, changed very easily by Chris Harris. And we also got the report, remember, we also got the report from Country Club Connor Hughes that there were players in the meetings with Wilks when he's explaining, the game plan, saying, that's not going to work, coach. That's very bad. They were not buying into Wilks's thing, whatever it was, and we'll probably never know the exact specifics. But whatever it was, when you have players holding up their hand in the meetings with other players, and as he's saying, all right, this is what we're going to do, fellas, going, coach, we shouldn't do that. Hold on. This is not going to. And then, obviously Wilks overruled them and said, no, well, let's do it. And then you see the result is terrible. Then the players were right. And that's what happened. And that's, but if that's the case, maybe it can be fixed. Let's see. Maybe it'll be fixed, and maybe people like Jermaine and Will and everyone else we got will just perform a lot better. That would be fantastic. So let's see what happens. But we did get that report out of Country Club Connor Hughes, and that's why you can't totally disregard the beat members. They do have sources, and they do get information at times. That's valuable. All right, next up, Jeremy Ruckert. They asked him about why'd you give him a contract. He said, well, we've seen a lot of improvement since training camp, which is true, and that he provides value as a combo tight end, meaning a blocker and a receiver, which is excellent. They asked him the long trap question with the long ramp up about did he think about calling the defense himself. And I thought he handled that question pretty well. He admitted that he did, but then he said, but I wanted to handle the whole team, so I didn't want to call the defense. He didn't get into the whole Wilkes defense versus Glenn defense because he's not going to do that in a press conference. But he could have still had, I mean, like, it had to be that Wilkes talked him into this because he could have just said, no, we're running my defense that we ran in, Detroit, which is more of a standard 4-3. You could talk about blitz rates and other things, but, standard 4-3 attack, one gap D. This is what we're running. And if Wilkes could have run that D, it could have been a point of, look, if you want this job, Steve, this is what we're running. I don't care what your freaking philosophical thoughts are. Steve Wilkes must be great in these interviews, by the way. I mean, he keeps getting these jobs. I mean, yeah, he's one and done. He's the king of the one and dones. But then people keep hiring. He must be great in these interviews. So he must at least sound like he knows what he's talking about. And in his mind, he's probably thinking, man, if I ever had the right people, But nonetheless, he could have done that, but he didn't. Wilkes must have convinced him, no, let's do this other thing. And we did hear also from Connor Hughes that sort of back and forth was at play with Wilkes and Glenn, and so that makes a lot of sense. The other note on the media watch is Mike Florio with his one and done. He just really wants it to be one and done for Aaron Glenn, which is really weird. Because on the one hand, people like Florio, flaccid Florio, will scream up and down and off rooftops about we need more black head coaches, which is true. I do think so. But he'll scream when he's going up against the owners, which is he's an old labor lawyer. In addition to being mobbed up, he's also an old labor lawyer, Mike Florio, flaccid Florio. So when he's screaming about the owners about and being self-righteous and indignant and saying these owners got to hire more black coaches. Okay, well, Woody just hired one and paid him a lot of money. We're paying Aaron Glenn a lot of money. But now he's screaming for it to be one and done. I mean, what the fuck? Can we give the guy a chance? Can we give the man a chance? Okay, he made a mistake. He didn't get this perfectly right. Give the man a chance. He's got to get at least 3 years, in my opinion. But that's one of those things where you have these people and they really just don't care one way or another about anything. It's just let me figure out an angle that'll get the clickety clicks, and then even if the next time I'm going to go at the complete opposite way, as long as that will get clickety clicks, then I'm good. Flaccid Florio for you. But that's a lot of people in the media, and that's why we're here at FSPN to point out these jerkwads.